My 31M girlfriend, 29F, lied about the kind of relationship she had with her roommate, 29M. So I met my girlfriend online and we've been together for about 2 months now. Despite it being semi-long distance, it's been pretty solid and probably the most open and communicative relationship I've ever had to date. I keep a lot of my emotions usually locked tight away inside, and she's gotten me to talk a lot about my past relationships, and she's done the same. Some parts were rocky for me because she told me her roommate was actually her ex, and I won't lie, I had a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, but I thought, well, that relationship was years ago, maybe 4 years ago, and that they're just best friends now. She also reiterated several times, almost vehemently, that she was not interested in him in any capacity and that she was not sexually attracted to him. A few weeks ago, about the start of October, while I was over, she mentioned that her and her roommate slept together earlier this year. She said she wanted to tell me because she didn't want it to seem like she was hiding it from me, but that it was a mistake. She was upset from another guy she was seeing and had sex with her roommate to feel better, and that it never happened again. I had a whirlwind of uneasiness hit me, but ultimately we talked some more and I decided I had no right to be upset over something that happened before she even knew me, and that I would trust her going forward. The next day, and I realize how this will sound, she was not home and there was a blackout. She texted me as I was still in her apartment and told me to unplug all her stuff in case of power surges. So as I went around doing that, I got to her iPad and it lit up, presumably because of the storm knocking out power. I saw notifications on her Facebook Messenger from him, but as I couldn't log onto the iPad I couldn't read her responses to them, but his side of the messages were fishy and suspicious to say the least. I didn't get into the iPad that week and I swallowed my fears and doubts for the rest of the month. Until yesterday. She was again not home and I did something I'm not proud of. I got onto her iPad and read her messages from him. They were semi-harmless at first, but most of it was out of context. She said they don't hang out much, but a lot of the messages were basically variations of "Hey, wanna hang out?" Until I got to the exact day before we had our first date. We had been talking for half a month before we met, pretty intimately and romantic I'd add, and on our first date, we had sex because it felt right for us. The message, however, from the night before from her roommate was, "Hey, wanna handle my rocket?" To which she replied, "Lama, sure, let me take a shower first." I obviously reeled at this for a number of reasons, one being she literally had sex with him the night before the morning she kissed me for the first time. And to me, as evident from the sheer casual manner of asking, that this is not the first time, nor the second. It's much too casual to be anything less than a common occurrence, so the whole "it was a mistake and it only happened once" thing was an outright lie. And it may just be my brain doing loops on itself now, but it calls into question every other hangout message she got from him in the span of our 2-month relationship. Some other information I've gathered from my snooping was that they say "I love you" very often. They are both very sad and depressed people and seem to have a sort of codependency. I realize that I messed up by snooping, and I don't condone what I did by any means. It was an entire breach of privacy, but it's hard for me to feel remorseful when my fears were proven right. We had a long talk yesterday about it all and she wasn't even mad about my snooping, but was very remorseful herself that she didn't tell me. But she continued to reiterate the whole spiel about not being attracted to him at all and that she was with me, not him. I told her it's very hard for me to feel secure in our relationship knowing that they were essentially sex buddies and that he's always there next door. Not only that, but she had sex with him literally the night before our first date after talking for so long. Like she couldn't wait a day for sex. We, for the most part, decided to continue to try keep moving forward together and pretend it didn't happen, as I'm supposed to meet her parents tomorrow. But it's been eating me alive all night. I'm not trying to justify my actions, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Am I overreacting? Is this not a big deal? Like, is this normal for people to do nowadays? I don't date much, so I won't pretend I know what's normal in society, but I just don't feel comfortable with it anymore. Do I just try to carry on and pretend her roommate is really just her best friend now? Or should I break up with her and distance myself from this complicated looking mess? Too long didn't read. My girlfriend lied about her current roommate and he was actually her fuck buddy as recently as the same month we started dating, and I don't know if I should break up with her or if I'm overreacting or not. I would break up with her. That's not cool to lie about, and dating someone who lives with someone they used to fuck all the time would make me uncomfortable. The lies are enough to hamper any relationship. Plus, her fuck buddy is always in the next room. Drama-filled times ahead. It's only been 2 months. Break up and move on. Cut your losses and run. You'll find someone who doesn't lie about this eventually. 2 months is way too early to be dealing with drama. Just dump her and move on. My boyfriend insists I sound irritated or annoyed when I feel perfectly normal/happy, and it's tearing us apart. Too long didn't read. My boyfriend keeps arguing that I sound rude and irritated when I don't feel that way at all. I could be in a happy mood and be told I'm exuding an annoyed tone of voice, and I'd what to believe. 20F, 23M, my boyfriend and I keep clashing over the same argument. Every so often he'll tell me I'm talking to him rudely or irritably, sometimes annoyingly. This is often during a discussion/disagreement. He usually lets me know with some irritation of his own, or he could get really mad about it and blow up. The problem is, 90% of the time I absolutely have no idea what he's talking about. These could be times I'm very consciously paying attention to my vocal tone and words to make sure I'm being kind, or I could literally be in a positive mood with no feelings of annoyance or irritability, but he still persists I have a tone of voice that conveys otherwise to him. Frown. After he mentions it, what usually follows is me being very confused, saying that I honestly didn't feel that way. I felt positive/happy. I wasn't irritated at all, or reiterating that I was actually paying really close attention to my tone, so I believe I didn't entirely sound that way, and I always try to apologize just in case. For example, I'm sorry if I came across that way, I didn't intend to. He tells me this is dismissing him, and he tells me I sound so rude, and I literally go into a panic attack every time because I feel so confused, especially when I know I was in a positive mood. It's so frustrating. I don't know where the problem lies. He says it's not what I say, but it's how I sound. I've only had one other partner refer to me as condescending, never irritable or rude, and every one of their friends told me they were in fact the condescending one. No one has ever told me I frequently sound rude or irritable. However, I wonder if I really do. It's driving me crazy. My boyfriend is a very empathetic person, however we just won't stop arguing over this. He gets so worked up and it's killing our relationship. As soon as I try to share my perspective by saying I felt differently than he observed, he blowsup. He's only been in one other long-term relationship, 3 years, and she was very abusive. I know her personally, so I know this is true. She gaslights and gaslights. However, so does his dad. These are 2 people he's been traumatized by in his life, and I often wonder if his perception of me being irritable or rude is due to past experiences. However, that sounds like him just blaming his trauma. I want to know for sure who is miscommunicating. What on earth do I do? Who is in the wrong? How do I even know? Exclamation mark. It sounds like he's annoyed with you, not that you're being annoying. I know those 2 statements are easy to read as being the exact same thing, but I think it's worth taking the time to pull the difference between those 2 things apart. Your mannerisms are bothering him, but are not innately bothersome. There are a lot of situations where this happens, and I'm sure you'd be more familiar with some of them. Put another way, like when you start finding your partner's laugh really irritating, for instance, even if they're not doing anything wrong by laughing. Usually stuff like this happens when something else is bothering the person, and they subconsciously seek ways to vent their frustration. They latch onto something like it's the way you're talking to me, you're really rude, even when it's not really that, it's something else they're not even aware of. I'd suggest sitting down and really talking it through, but waiting until you're both in a calm mood before you do it. Really try to get to the root of it. What specifically is frustrating him? What behavior is even causing this reaction? Is it possible for him to recognize that your behavior doesn't match what he's just assuming you mean? If this seems really daunting, try doing it with a couples therapy professional. They'll be really good at mediating and redirecting the conversation to healthy places. Stop trying to explain and begging him to understand. It's no longer important if he understands, he needs to be told his constant disbelief and accusations are not acceptable. It's going to kill trust and affection between you two. He needs to do better. Tell him he is now expected to respect you enough to trust you when you say there is not a problem. That doesn't mean he can't ever be annoyed, but it does mean trust is required, even when he is annoyed. You can't possibly be safe and happy in a relationship where you are constantly disbelieved and blown up at. He needs to do better. What he is doing is no longer a misunderstanding, it's actively unkind and disrespectful. You've done everything you can imagine to do. Now he needs to work on the problem at least half as hard as you have, and moderate his reactions and respect your clear statements about your own feelings. This is not blaming him for his trauma. This is reminding him that his trauma might explain why he behaves in certain ways, but it does not excuse them or mean those things have to be acceptable to you. This can't be acceptable to you. He needs to seriously work on it. Out of respect and consideration for you, if he continues to disbelieve, disrespect and blow up at you, you might need to face the fact that he is not just acting out of trauma, he is actually reenacting the gaslighting and emotional manipulation he has experienced before. Look at what happens now every time you argue, based on your description. Instead of arguing the merits of your positions, everything flips to your tone, which has no bearing on the rightness or wrongness of the argument. It's a classic tactic people use to derail any argument and put their opponent on the defensive, flipping things into you needing to apologize to them for hurting them. Now he may very well have real trauma around tone of voice based on his past relationships, but he is not allowed to use that to browbeat you into always losing every argument or never being able to advocate for yourself in a discussion. We can be gentle with people who have trauma, we can be understanding, but we don't have to be doormats and we don't have to acquiesce to all of their demands. It is his responsibility to manage his trauma to the point where he can have a respectful relationship. Does this happen with anyone else or is it literally just you? Can he handle disagreements at work or school or with friends? Because if not, that means there is something unique to you and how your relationship positions you in regards to him that makes him interpret everything you say in the most hostile way possible. I would bet that anyone he dated who got upset with him or tried to argue with him would be accused of having the wrong tone. It's not about you, it's about the people closest to him being able to hurt him, and so he probably tries to cover up that vulnerability by going on the attack. Guess what? When you're annoyed, you're allowed to sound annoyed. When you're mad, you're allowed to sound frustrated or upset. You can't always speak to him in a totally neutral or nicey-wicey tone of voice. That's unreasonable and childish. And if he can't handle that, then he's not ready to be in an adult relationship. This sounds like he's learned some toxic habits from being abused. If I were in your shoes, I would insist on an immediate ceasefire on any argument/discussion where he accuses you of being rude/irritable. I don't feel that way. So let's take a break. Let's come back when we've both had some time to chill. It's a strong possibility he is getting emotionally overwhelmed during arguments. Google emotional flooding. The Gottman Institute offers good articles on this topic, and misattributing his distress to his perception of your tone. It's also possible that he's using it, unintentionally or not, as a control tactic. He feels like he's losing the argument, so he derails it to focus on your voice, which leaves you wrong-footed, confused and unable to proceed. If he won't agree to breaks, or breaks don't help, I'd bet on number 2. Can you talk about this with his therapist? My boyfriend gets mad when I tell him no. My boyfriend and I have been dating for almost a year, and every time I tell him no, he begs until I give in and do whatever he wants me to do. In this case, there's times when I agree to doing things with him, or taking pictures/videos because he's begging me to say yes, but later when it comes down to doing it I change my mind and don't want to do it anymore, and that gets him mad. He tells me that the reason he gets upset is because I tell him yes, get him excited for me to end up saying no, which almost all the time I only say yes because he's insisting, or he gets sad that I don't want to do it and I feel bad for not doing it, so I give in and do what he wanted. I've told him multiple times that no means no, and that he needs to understand that sometimes I don't want to do certain things, and some things I personally don't feel comfortable doing, but he doesn't get it and continues to stay mad at me. Sometimes we only solve our issue by sending him / doing whatever I said no to. Lol, I feel pathetic typing this out, but I hope you guys understand me and help me out. TL drive, my boyfriend gets mad when I say no, or when I agree to do something and change my mind to no. He says that why should I get him excited for intimate pictures / videos if I'm not even going to send him any. He says I should have just said no lol, but I only change my mind to no because that was originally my first answer, but he begs until I give in and say yes even if I don't want to do it. Female 21, male 21.